Ladd, a music journalist in Nashville, and I'm really curious about retro and cult bands and the history behind their music. Every time I'm out with friends, we end up talking about bands that we love, sharing personal anecdotes and facts, and talking about why we like their music so much. So I decided to record these conversations and create a space where we can go in depth and share with other people who love music. On this show, I pick a band with a cult following and have a guest from the music scene here in Nashville hop on to delve into the history surrounding that band. We go into their discography and give context about not only the music, but also the art, politics, influences, and different forms of media surrounding these artists, in turn giving you a better understanding about their art. I hope this podcast helps someone find their new favorite band or helps someone learn something new about a band they've always loved. You can follow @Bandsplainer on Twitter to keep up with new episodes, and you can always find more episodes on olivialadd.com. Thanks for listening. Hey everyone, and welcome to Bandsplainer, the podcast where we explain bands. Today we are going to talk about the history and mystery that is Animal Collective, the experimental indie pop band that formed in the early 2000s. And our guest today is Patty Greer, my college roommate and dear friend. And music business connoisseur, you could say.
That's my title, baby.
That's her specific title. So I really wanted to have Patty on this podcast because Animal Collective was one, when I started this, I definitely had on a list to do, because I feel like a lot of people just have misconceptions about this band or have a hard time getting into them. Patty is the first person that got me into them because we were college roommates, and we were looking through her vinyl or something like that, and I said I don't get Animal Collective, and she was literally no, they're the modern day Grateful Dead, you have to get them, listen to this album. And the rest,
the Grateful Dead of our generation.
They are, and the rest is history. Okay, so a quick introduction to this band is just that they are an indie pop band that formed in the midst of the indie electronic boom of the early 2000s, right in 2003 on the East Coast. They consist of A.V. Terror, Panda Bear, Deacon, and Geologist, who are all solo artists on their own, and
they're also lifelong best friends.
Yeah, so their actual names are David Portner, Noah Lennox, Josh Dibb, and Brian Waits? I don't know how to say that. And so they grew up all together in Baltimore, and they kind of started working when they lived in Williamsburg, started forming an actual band. But the cool thing about this band is that when they're working on music, whether it be touring or a installation or a whole album, it's always usually a combination. So it can be, they work in groups from 2 to 4. So even if it's just 2 of them writing, it can be, different combinations of that, or 3 of them, or all of them. As with the later albums, I think it's been mostly all of them. They also recruit friends and things like that. So this band is just
They're so wholesome.
They are.
It's just such a community.
It is, and it's so, they truly are a great example of an artist community. And just I mean, wouldn't you agree? Experimental to the core, everything they do. Yeah.
Oh my god.
I also would like to apologize to any girl who hates Animal Collective, because some dude at college tried to explain Animal Collective to you, and I hope this podcast fixes that, because they are a cool band. Don't listen to any. That's what happened for me with Animal Collective and Radiohead. Some dude was dude, you have to listen to Kid A and Merriweather Post Pavilion. It's basic indie 101. And I was okay, these bands are lame. And then I actually listened to them. It's be your own Pitchfork boyfriend. Listen to your own music.
You can get into them in so many different ways. I feel like you could just go into one of their solo projects, dip your toes in the water, and then build up to the Papa Bear.
Oh, yeah. And that kind of happened, as well, because I didn't listen to a ton of Animal Collective, but I had always liked Panda Bear.
Yeah, I feel like you were into, slasher flicks, too, when that was a thing.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's the beauty of Animal Collective, is it's this ever-morphing, experimental project that just fills every corner of the plane, and there's no one way to, it's not the Beatles. It's not this is their sound, this is what they do.
Oh my God, no.
I shouldn't have compared the Beatles. People are gonna
I don't know
hate
what.
that.
No, that's
but
yeah.
like,
No, that's
but like, you know,
no,
like,
that's no. It's like
exactly.
fine. It's because it is just completely the
opposite. It's
yeah.
the complete. Animal Collective is the opposite of the Beatles. Okay. We said it. Okay.
They're the Grateful Dead of our generation.
They're the Grateful Dead of our generation. And that's what's cool about them is within their solo projects, like, I feel like a lot of people may know, like, especially A.V. Terror and Panda Bear, like, just their, like, electronic stuff. They do, like, independent DJ sets and have their own albums that kind of cross over into this kind of music. So they do everything from, like, freak folk to straight up pop to noise rock and art rock and ambient and drone. And they're low-key a jam band. And they're all these, they're high-key a jam band.
Every band is a jam band.
Okay, yeah, every good band is definitely a jam band. If you
I'm gonna throw out a lot of just declarative statements.
I'm doing it. Like,
I stand by all of them.
I do. I don't back down from that statement. If you really like a band, think about it, and then answer just quietly to yourself the question: are they a jam band? And the answer is going to be yes. If you've seen a band live and they have an 8-minute song and you're like, oh, dude, yeah, I could keep listening to this for another 8 minutes, they're a jam band. Ty Segall, jam band. Radiohead, jam band.
Yola Tango, jam band.
Yola Tango is definitely a jam band. Brooks and Dunn, jam band.
Jam band.
Okay. So basically...
Sheryl Crow, jam band.
Sheryl Crow is so a jam band.
Dude.
She totally is a jam band.
Cheryl ain't jamming, she ain't living.
Okay, so how this band formed is Noah Lennox and Josh Dibbs, so that's Panda Bear and Deacon, met when they were in high school on the East Coast in Baltimore, and they had a band called Automine. So Lennox went to another school, and then Deacon met A.V. Terror, geologist, and they, all four of them, when they came home in the summers, started, like, jamming together, kind of, and they weren't really in an official band, but they were, like, they just wanted to be musicians. So they all were, like, we're gonna help each other be musicians, and they started taking LSD, as happens.
Guys being dudes.
Guys being dudes, right? They're always doing that. But so they, in many interviews, have talked about how that, like, helped them become better players because they would just sit there and play music for who knows how many hours, and whether it was the LSD or the fact that they were practicing for 8 hours straight with incredible stamina, they became better guitar players and better instrumentalists. I bet they still microdose. I bet they're 30 years old microdosing.
That's good for you, apparently.
Yeah.
Shout out Andrew.
So, to me, a really cool thing about this time, so this is like early college, high school, is they said a huge influence for them was Can. And yes, give it up for Can.
Give it up for Can.
I think I talk about Can in every podcast because Can is so cool. And they literally, Can is a lot, like, you could, Animal Collective, I feel like there's 3 bands you could really compare them to, and that's Grateful Dead, Velvet Underground, and Can. And the Can thing here is that Can, so basically, psychedelic is rooted in blues very much, which comes out of, like, Southern music. So you have in London, you have the London Underground and Nuggets, which is still very much based in blues, and then you have, like, the San Francisco, New York, American psychedelic bands. You have everything from Jimi Hendrix to 13th Floor Elevators going on. And then in Germany, you get krautrock, which is this super weird genre. Personally, like, kind of my favorite genre. Like, the other day I, like, Googled just,
krautrock forever.
Yeah, I was like, krautrock bands. And then every band that came up, I was like, oh, that's my favorite band. Oh, that's like, my favorite band. And then I was like, oh, wait, I think I like krautrock a lot. I think I'm really into krautrock. And so basically, they took away this, like, blues element where it's rooted in this one type of rock, which is not bad. I could get down to, like, any psychedelic band. But Can is, like, avant-garde, and they pulled in, like, jazz and funk and minimalism and made this crazy music, and Can, to me, is just, like, the best example of that. And Animal Collective, I feel, pulls a lot from that, because even though all this indie pop was happening when Animal Collective was coming about, they took a totally different direction and made something that could also be marketed as commercial into this totally avant-garde crazy art. And it's, like, neoclassical, it's unique, it's fresh, and that's why they're still around, you know, today in 2018.
Yeah.
Yeah, so these dudes, they're all jamming every day in the summer, and then they get into performance art. And they had this like group called Windy Darling. It was just like it was AV Terror and Geologist, so this was kind of their project. And they used like a drum machine and made music based on like old movie soundtracks, I guess, as like their inspiration. So that's just kind of like an example of some of their first solo projects too. Portner goes to NYU, and then they're all spending their summers in Maryland. So Portner has this like apartment in Williamsburg, and they are become friends with Black Dice, which is like a big thing for them because that ends up, I believe, being that was the first tour they ever went on, is they opened for Black Dice. So they're also friends with Eric Copeland at this time, and so like all music, the scenes like influence each other. People in the scene influence each other, and this is like a great example of like a creative trade-off happening because Black Dice lived in like a warehouse, and this is where the Velvet Underground comparison could come in because they have this artist curating a scene quite literally in a warehouse, like Andy Warhol's factory, and they're doing these kind of like drone, like avant-garde parties where they all go in a room and there's all this art around that they've all, someone has made. There's high-profile people there, there's musicians, there's NYU students, and then they're jamming for hours, going all night. Sometimes this turns into a drone thing, much like the Velvet Underground would. Sometimes this is like quite literally them playing stuff they've rehearsed, and once again, that's just kind of like the malleability of this band, is that it's never like one specific thing going on. So this summer, in 2000, when they were doing all of this, they claim was the basis for their sound from then on. They truly found like their niche in this, once again, avant-garde sound. And they also this summer started doing the face paint thing. Mm-hmm. So they wore like masks and did face paint and makeup, which they ended up phasing out like 6 years later because they said it was too gimmicky. But originally that was kind of their like part of their self-expression, was this crazy outward appearance to go with this totally out of bounds music. Mm-hmm. They go on tour with Black Dice, which later gets turned into their first live album, released in 2002. Okay, so they released Spirit, They're Gone, They've Vanished soon after this in 2001, right before that live album. This album is super dense. It's like I would look at it as like a soundscape. Like if you're looking at sound on like a plane with 4 lines, you're filling in every corner on this. This is like their first record, so it's obviously not the sound they go with forever. But if you look back at this record, you're seeing a lot of stuff that kind of shows up again throughout their music. It's like a really good prerequisite for what they're doing, because you have Everyone Whistling and Spirit They Vanish, like the title track. Yeah, so you have really electronically influenced, like, heavy album. And then they start taking a new direction in the next years. So they release, I can't ever say this correctly,
Hollandaise sauce.
Hollandigan. And Here Comes the Indian, which is like a really popular one. And then we get into Sung Tongs, which comes out 2004. And this album is like so important, maybe just to my life, but also just in general. It's like so important.
God. They've already sold out 2 nights just performing Sung Tongs.
Really? Yeah. They released this in 2004, and I would like to take a moment to reflect on Sung Tongs. So many good individual songs here, but so what they did is they were playing this crazy, like, electronic, like, really heavy music, like just full of different sounds, and they go the complete opposite on Sung Tongs. It's literally like guys playing acoustic guitar and yelling. Like the first time I heard it, amazing. I was like, I don't get it. I was like, are they just yelling over acoustic guitar? Like what? And then I got it. Then I like kept listening to it. So it's like a totally different format. So really what they're pushing here, in earlier years, they're pushing this new way of creating sound, and here they're pushing a new way of delivering sound. And I think that's the context you need to understand it. You have the song College, that's literally them just going like, la, 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 la. And then all they say is like, you don't have to go to college. And then it's like, like a harmonized just outro.
The track Leaf House on Sung Tongs, when you listen to it, it doesn't sound like I don't know. The first, like, so many times I listened to it, I didn't actually get what was happening. But it's about the boys losing their cat and how sad they are. Because, like, if you listen to it, they're like, I'm not going to make it.
But it's one of those songs where the lyrics are used as a means to an end rather than for lyrical content. And I think that's...
No, it's lyrical content. They lost their cat and they're sad.
Well, no, it's lyrical content, but it's almost... it's kind of like Radiohead has these ridiculous lyrics, but it's like...
And you don't even notice.
Well, yeah, the sonic quality is using the vocals, those lyrics, as an instrument to deliver like a rhythm to the music or like a new melody in the music. And that's what they did here. Is so like it's like a funny lyrical thing that's hidden that no one may ever think about, but also the way they're forming words with their, like, literally with their mouth creates a sound that's vitable. It makes it an instrument. It goes beyond, like, telling a story. And I think that's another thing about, like, just Animal Collective's sonic quality is, like, once again, they're, like, filling the plane with, like, every type of sound. Yeah, honestly.
Enter the void!
Animal Collective fills my void. My favorite on this one is Who Could Win a Rabbit. I think it's just, like, such a crazy song because it's... What's crazy about this album is it is an Animal Collective album. You can tell it sounds like their old stuff, but it's not at all. It's literally acoustic. Like, it's crazy. It's so good. So what's incredible here is even though this is a super weird album that kind of has to be understood in context of all their other work, because alone it would just be a bad acoustic band, kind of, is their harmonies are incredible, like, on this. And they have these incredible harmonies, and everything is so, like, in tune, which kind of odes to their, like, neoclassical, like, kind of composition element, is that they really do compose these, like, wonderful songs, even when they're drawn out and, like, 13 minutes long, like Visiting Friends is. Like low-key a jam, high-key a jam band.
High-key.
Sung Tongs is like one of my favorite. And so these guys, Animal Collective has 9 studio albums and literally so many EPs. I like couldn't figure out how many they have exactly.
Well, all the EPs usually come as like a partner.
Yeah,
with, like,
record, exactly.
And that's my favorite part because it's like a present.
No, that is a cool
like a
thing because they'll more than just releasing a single, they do put out kind of like this EP that like sometimes it's a totally opposite sounding thing, and they'll release like 4 songs and then put out the record or like right after, but that's cool. So yeah, like I feel like we can't even go over every single album in detail, so I'm just gonna kind of hit the important ones on this one. But Sung Tongs is so important. I think you should, if you're gonna like go in order here,
what would you say was the top 3 things you should listen to? Record or EP?
Oh, wow. I feel like we're going to get into some of this later, but I would say I would listen to Merriweather Post Pavilion because that's the most, like, familiar. That one you're taking with some familiarity because it's a lot like other indie pop. Yeah, it's the most accessible. Okay, that's the word. So Merriweather Post Pavilion is the most accessible. You would listen to it and probably know some of the songs, first of all. Second of all, it would be familiar enough to not, like, turn you away from them. And then I would probably...
I like Strawberry Jam.
Okay, so the EP I would listen to is Fall Be Kind, released in 2009, because of What Would I Want Sky, which we will get into in a moment. Ooh. The third thing I think people should listen to probably would be Strawberry Jam. We're going to 2007... So that's when they put out Strawberry Jam, and this was Pitchfork's Album of the Year in 2007. That's height Pitchfork time. That's
when Pitchfork's still credible.
Right. 2007, Strawberry Jam. Fireworks is a great song on its own. It's 7 minutes long, and I think even when I didn't like Animal Collective, I loved the song Fireworks. That was on my, like, party playlist. Like, that's, like, a go-to. But, like, you have, like, Cuckoo, Cuckoo, number 1, Fireworks, For Reverend Green, maybe the best song of 2007. I don't know. So I think you should listen to the 2009 EP, Fall Be Kind, which was released a little bit after Merriweather Post Pavilion, which we'll talk about as their, like, obviously most accessible album. So the reason you should listen to this EP is because altogether it's great, but the singular song, What Would I Want Sky, 7-minute jam.
It's a question. It's, what would I want? Sky.
Yeah, so first of all, honestly, the title of the song kind of like is an allusion to the sound, like What Would You Want Sky? It's kind of this endless sound. So the coolest thing about this song is that first of all, it was debuted live, and that's cool. It's a very jam band move, very, very Grateful Dead
Velvet Underground
Grateful
move.
Dead. Some may say.
Yeah, some may say.
The Grateful Dead of our generation.
The reason I would say they're the Grateful Dead of our generation is this song specifically.
This is definitely, if you catch me out, I'll say that statement, and this is my only fallback though on it.
This is the biggest.
I'm just like, listen, what would I want, Sky?
Yeah, that's the biggest piece of evidence, because What Would I Want, Sky off of Fall Be Kind is the only song, the first and only song in the history of music that has a legal Grateful Dead sample. And oh my god, how cool do you have to be to get the only approval from like Bob Ware to like use their song and make money off of it, and they're like, you know what, you deserve it.
It just feels like such like a friendship thing, and like so just like it's just so respectful. It's like, I don't know, like these like dudes that have been around for so long that have done so much for music, it like literally giving you all of their approval.
And the thing about this is, like, sampling happens all the time, obviously. Usually it's not a big deal. It might be cool. Like, for me, it's cool that, like, Kanye samples Can and, like, stuff like that, and Arthur Russell. But this one, I feel like of all...
Arthur Russell.
He does. Kanye samples Arthur Russell, and it's awesome on TLOP. We can talk about that album later, and I'll probably get a lot of mean emails. So, this song does it justice. Oh my god.
I think it does too. I think it's a
makes it
marriage.
into a new piece of art. It makes it beyond both of their
Just
abilities as bands. It's, incredible. Love Animal Collective. They deserve it.
Baby.
And Co. Yeah. And so, yeah, you have them sampling, like, the greatest band in the American psychedelic movement, in my opinion. And, you know, say what you want about the Grateful Dead.
No,
like,
don't say what you want, because I'm coming to your home.
I'm going to email you about it.
I will email you about it.
So say what
you don't like Grateful Dead, you don't get it.
You actually don't? Okay,
like, it's fine.
We can talk
say
about
what you
that.
want about, like, Fish, say what you want about whatever, no.
But, like, if you don't like Grateful Dead, you probably don't get a lot of other things.
Because you also you're not going through the full discography.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
No,
like,
and
you're,
that's,
like, just basing it off of hearing, like, Friend of the Devil, and you're just
it's like, okay, so you've heard Sugar Magnolias? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk deeper cuts, okay? Then you can
Let's
talk
talk
to me.
funk.
Let's talk New Minglewood Blues, and then
yes,
talk
baby,
to
Shakedown
me.
Street.
But also...
Maybe we should be talking about Grateful Dead.
Right?
No, I'm kidding. Animal Collective is also...
You wouldn't have a lot of the bands you have right now if it weren't for Grateful Dead.
Totally.
And I'm not talking about Fish. I'm talking about, like... I don't even know. There's so many. There's so many. That's the thing. You wouldn't have a lot of psychedelic influenced bands now, and like
a little band called Tame Impala.
Tame Impala is the. I can't share my opinions on Tame Impala on this podcast. Actually,
what's up? Lonerism's cool. She mad.
No, Lonerism is cool because you recorded alone in his bedroom. I don't like modern Tame Impala where people are like, dude, you like psychedelic music? And I'm like, okay, let's talk Black Angels and Brian Jonestown, and like then we'll talk psychedelic. But you can listen to Tame Impala and go to Pitchfork, but have
Delicate
fun.
Steve. I feel like that's a...
Yeah. So now that we've gotten so off topic.
Back to it.
Merriweather Post Pavilion is named after the historic...
Merriweather
Post Pavilion. And this album is really, really, really important to indie rock. You have a lot of singles.
I'm literally getting goosebumps right now just thinking
about it literally gives me goosebumps. I can't tell you how many times I've listened to this album.
I just know, like, I know My Girls is obviously, like, the single that everyone knows all the time, like, whatever. But when you actually think about My Girls and, like, what it's about, I actually tear up every single
and this
time.
song, this is a song that, like, this intro literally just feels like, I don't know, it's like bubbles fizzing to the top. Yeah, it's like puts goosebumps on the back of your neck, because My Girls is a song about, like, kind of romance and minimalism to me. And so the lyrics are quite literally, he's like, I don't need...
It's a song to, like, his future family.
Yeah,
like,
and so he's writing about it. A lot of people might look at it as, like, maybe even anti-capitalism, which is a little bit of a stretch. But it's kind of about, like, the simplicity, like, all you need. And it's the sweetest song, and it's not, like, a normal love song. It's not a coffee shop love song. It's a cool Animal Collective, like, song about, like, what you need. So the lyrics are literally, I don't need to seem like I care about material things, like a social stance. All I want is 4 walls and Adobe slats for my girls. And, like...
I'm gonna cry.
I know! It's so simple! And it's like, all I want is 4 walls and Adobe slots for my girls. Like, all he wants is a family and a simple house, and that's enough. And to be able to be in this super successful band and, like, say that's enough, like...
That's all you want.
That's all you want. That's all any of us should want, I guess, really, at the end of the day. But then you also have really great songs on here, like Summertime Clothes and Brother Sport, I think is probably...
A bop.
Is truly a bop. That's probably one everyone knows if you listen to any indie music when you were, I don't know, I was in high school when... In 2009, yeah, when indie music was in the boom.
I think I actually found A.V. Tear before I found Animal Collective. Because it was way back when. It was like 8th grade when Urban Outfitters would release playlists on iTunes that you could download for free. And so, like, where do you find music?
Yeah, no, that's how I definitely found Panda Bear on Tumblr. And then I was like, okay, that's how I found all my music was Tumblr, because I feel like I say this in every podcast, but I grew up, like, I heard some cool music. Like, my mom played Sweet Dreams by Eurythmics probably every day, and that's still, like, my favorite song, and definitely explains a lot. But most of the music I was listening to was kind of, like, country or, like, contemporary Christian. And then, like, Bob Dylan, which also explains a lot. But, so when I was getting into music, it was definitely whatever I found on Tumblr, because I'm also, like, I don't know. I don't know. And that's the cool thing about doing this podcast, is it's, like, definitely, like, a very millennial view of all these things, but I think it's cool to take the time and research things that you weren't there for and learn about them and explain it through a lens of, like, having new music there, too, because there's more to be said about these bands now, because there's bands that have come from them. The branches are longer, so I think it's a cool thing.
Totally.
Yeah, so after Merriweather Post Pavilion was released, they put out Odd Sack, which is a visual record with the director Danny Perez, and this premiered at Sundance in 2010. It was super cool. So this is something I feel is like some big ears shit that you would see at Big Ears. So they combined like 60s psychedelia visuals.
What year was it?
2010.
Okay.
A lot of people like Pitchfork, Spin, all these people, this is when they start getting mainstream attention, which they always kind of had huge attention in the indie circuit. Just the fact that they started out in like Baltimore and New York really gave them this platform with all their friends, and they were already touring and all these things. But this is when like people, I think this really caught the attention of more than their target audience to me, because they branch out into this weird visual thing and they readopt. It's kind of like if someone from now discovered all the 60s psychedelia, like beyond pop art for the first time, and then they make it, once again, they take something that already is and make it into something even greater.
Well, it's also, it just like, I love Beyonce. No, I'm not, like, saying anything here. But it's, like, when all these people started doing visual albums in the past, like, 2 or 3 years, it's, like, it's been happening for a minute.
Yeah.
Even before Odd Sack and stuff, it's just, like, that isn't groundbreaking. It's still really cool. That was just on such, like, a mainstream level. Like, I don't know, when Odd Sack happened, and it was, like, me and, like, 4 of my girlfriends in a loft just, like...
watching Odd Sack,
like, I had to, like, find it, stream it somewhere, like...
Oh, no, it's definitely cooler. And that's the thing. It's so, not only was this kind of, like, not a thing a lot of people were doing, I think from a monetary standpoint even, maybe, like, if you're in an indie band and you're trying to appease this major record label while still having indie cred, you're not going to put all your time into a visual record. Yeah. And they did. And that's so cool. And, and it's 60s psychedelia, which is, like, this, they're reinventing this thing that wasn't popular, was fading out. The whole, like, psychedelic thing has only been... post 2010 to me kind of made a resurgence, other than like this, group of people that grew up in the 90s. But for people like us, like I was born in the late 90s, like I wasn't there for most of music. This is like a rebirth of all that. And so it's things I liked from old music that I knew more about. And it's cool. You should watch it. You should totally watch it. It's so cool.
I love any artist that like keeps a full like community of everything.
of ideas, and it's
Yeah.
a way to translate those ideas into something, and that's like Patti Smith and Robert Mapplethorpe like wanted to not just be a photographer and a singer. They did like
just
like
so
a video.
well-rounded.
Yeah,
I think it's also just, good for the soul.
it is.
You know?
It is to do stuff like that. And so again with Danny Perez, and I guess it was still in 2010. This is cool because Patty and I just went to the Guggenheim.
Yeah, we did.
We went to the Guggenheim and we did a cool VR exhibit, and
We
it was
did.
super cool. And I had never been to New York before that, so that was awesome. Anyway, so Danny Perez, once again with them, they did this performance art piece called Transverse Temporal Gyrus, and temporal gyrus is the part of the brain where sound physically enters the brain matter before it's translated into something meaningful. And this is cool to think about on a very like micro level. Like this is like, when you hear something, you instantly hear it and it's all translated in your brain to make sense. There's no lag. So it's cool that this album focuses on the moment where it doesn't even make sense, where like it goes past your eardrum, physically enters the brain matter. Such like a micro like part of like
Some heady shit.
some creativity, And so anyway, so they performed Transverse Temporal Gyrus at the Guggenheim, and it takes up the entire Guggenheim. And they have lights and sound and people standing everywhere on all the levels of the spiral. And like after being there, I can't imagine how cool that would be. And to be in such a historic place with like such historic art around you, making new art and filling the space with the sound and light and
insanity.
It's really cool. And so that you can
my
actually,
God.
if you can find it, I'm sure it's on the internet somewhere. I don't think it's on like Spotify, but
Give it a goog.
it became a record store day release 2 years later on like a 12-inch vinyl. So that's really cool. You can find that.
Look it up.
So
people.
after that, they moved back to Baltimore because they wanted to kind of like reset, and they wanted to write together, because for a while they had written all these albums, but they were basically performing all these things they had just done live or for an album that they hadn't like written new songs in a while. But so they moved back, and then they actually played at Coachella that year. So in 2015 they released another live album, Live at 9:30.
Hell yeah.
And like a lot of the bands in this podcast, people will release a live album later in the career, and it kind of shows their growth. So you can really literally go back and listen to the album that was released in 2002, the live album, and then listen to this and see like
Live at 9:30.
Yeah, Live at 9:30 is the one they released in 2015, and you can like, that's so cool. Like you can see how much they've changed and grown as a band. And this one they also all four were really together for, and this is
one of
kind
my
of
exes has my box set of that.
that one pissed me off.
You're listening.
If you're listening to this podcast, please return
take that back.
Patty's box set of Live at 9:30.
Never given it to you.
In 2015, they had rewritten all this music, and they had Painting With. So that's really cool. And this actually premiered over the speakers at the Baltimore airport, which is really interesting. Like, I think this is cool, and this is another point I want to bring in, which, actually relates back to the temporal gyrus thing, is that Animal Collective, like a lot of bands in this canon, release their things in a creative way. So once again, on the point of Sung Tongs, where we're talking about like delivery of sound, this is kind of delivery of medium. So they premiered Painting With over the Baltimore airport speakers before Transverse Temporal Gyrus was a record store day release. So the actual physical performance of that one was released on BitTorrent. And so, so this is cool because the first album review I ever did when I was 18, and it was the first article I ever wrote for my school paper, was a review of Tomorrow's Modern Boxes by Tom York. And I had never written about music before that, and so that Tomorrow's Modern Boxes, like, all over, anywhere you read, even when I did research, it was like, this is the first album to ever be, like, purposefully released on BitTorrent with, like, a paywall.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. Transverse Temporal Gyrus was released 4 years before Tomorrow's Modern Boxes. They were way ahead of their time, even though they were, in the present time.
Yeah.
And that's cool to me because I, like, when I was researching this, like, looked up my old review and I was like, wow, like, I had no idea. And, like, they were ahead of Tom York. Like, take that, Radiohead. Like, Animal Collective to me, has a lot of similarities with Radiohead, especially, like, the lyrical thing, but, like,
Dude.
They were ahead of Radiohead. They did a concert in the historic Guggenheim in New York and then released it on BitTorrent with a paywall.
Hell yeah.
How cool. Yeah,
Hell
so
yeah.
cool. Yeah. Yeah, so going back to 2015, Painting With, I really love the song Kinda Bonkers. I think it's like kind of cool to look at because you have vocal harmony that's also really staticky, and you have like a delay on this, and it's like a lot of texture in the song. It's just a really textural song to listen to, and then they're also like screaming on it, and it's awesome.
Do you like the EP for this one?
Yeah. And,
Johnny Mac's the track.
I think, yeah. And so I think if you really want to get into Animal Collective, you should totally listen to every album and then listen to the EP after in order. And that would probably take you a really long time.
But do it.
If you're
going to do it right.
If you're going to do it right. Yeah, so in 2012, they released Centipede Hurts, which is between Merriweather Post Pavilion and their latest studio album. And Centipede Hurts really does get glazed over.
A lot of people don't like it. I think it's great.
I don't know. I don't think it's bad, actually. I feel like I haven't given this one enough time, and I definitely should. But this is good. I like the song Applesauce for sure, but I think that may have been a single or something, which is probably why I'm conditioned to like that one.
Enjoy it. I like Father Time a lot. I don't know. I really like this record. I don't know. I get why people don't like it as much, but it was like the first time I got to see Animal Collective live, like not in a festival setting, was on the Centipede Hurts tour, and it was just absolutely life-changing.
Yeah, I still have not seen Animal Collective live.
Really?
Really. And I'm like, I feel like I would...
Fake. We have attention, everyone.
Most of these bands I haven't been able to see live because they're like dead. So, okay. But I really need to do that. I think...
Come to New York.
Okay, cool.
July.
I'll fly there.
They're doing 2 nights of Sun Palms.
I know, I saw that. I would love to do that. So that's kind of covers all the basic albums. And I think a cool thing here is that, first of all, they're Roland users. They're big fans of the Roland Juno, which is very cool. I used to own one. And so they also use, in the beginning and even today, use household items as instruments, which is like some My Bloody Valentine shit. Is like, I just love that so much. That's so cool. And then also... Another fun fact is, so Panda Bear hates the Beach Boys. Like, he literally hates Pet Sounds, which is, like, my Twitter handle. Like, I am Pet Sounds. I know you're Pet Sounds. And that's, like, I love Pet Sounds. And, so, especially when they were in college, they,
very anti-Beach Boy
agenda. and so they said the song College, when they wrote it, was made to be like the opposite of everything the Beach Boys is. And I think that's so funny because it's still
oh my God.
Because I think they hate them so much because when they did this like super harmonizing thing, they get compared to the Beach Boys because it's like 4 guys harmonizing. And so the irony here is that they use the same studio space as Pet Sounds was recorded in to record some songs for Painting With.
I didn't know that.
And so, like, apparently Panda Bear was, like, pissed about that. And, like, I think that's really funny. Yeah, just to go back, like, this band totally... Everything they do is, like, beyond performance art. I think they're really committed to it.
I think they're really committed to each other. I think they're really committed to their friendship.
And
you can hear it.
You can hear it.
Every album.
And, like, Geologist was, like, whenever they took their break to, like, rewrite new songs in between Merriweather Post and Centipede Hurts and Painting With, Geologist became a lobbyist for ocean conservation in Congress. Yeah. So it's, like, everything they do is good.
Geologist also had, I'm trying to remember what line he did it with, but he had these shoes came out that were, like, no offense, they're kind of ugly, but I really like the idea of it. He, like, designed these shoes that come from, like, old hammocks or something.
Yeah. So it's, like, everything they do, they're, like, just experimental, like, recycling, like, so cool. So back in the beginning, and they said even today, they would trade cassettes, and so that's how they wrote music when they were all at different schools or colleges, they would, like, play a guitar line or something on a cassette, and then someone would record over it and send it back and forth. But also, and this is cool to me and Patty's friendship, is that they are huge advocates for radio as a format. And Patty and I actually met doing college radio because I went to an interest meeting and Patty worked for the radio, and I thought, she was super cool and like a cool female role model doing like music things, and I wanted to like be a part of that, and that like actually really college radio helped kind of helped like kickstart my whole career, because now I like produce a radio show, and I like worked for a couple of radio stations, and like it all started back at old WMTS 88.3. Patty had a show called The Pity Party that I'm sure played lots of Animal Collective.
I played hella Animal Collective.
But I think that's cool that they like really advocate for radio, and also with the cassette thing, they would Patty's literally crying. They would like put a cassette player in the radio and like record whole radio shows and like trade it. And I think that's awesome, because radio shows are not only cool for music discovery, but it is an art to put together a radio show with music that complements each other, that listeners would hear this song and this song and this song and like them all. And I think that's so essential to a radio show, whether it's country or whatever. I think it's cool. You have to be really smart about it. You have to really work hard. And so that's cool that they would hear someone else's radio show, and that would be an inspiration, and they'd have to mail that cassette to their friend at NYU and be like, listen to this whole radio show.
Well, it's exactly what we're doing right now. It's like, podcasts are literally just radio shows that now you get to listen to whenever you want to.
Oh,
that you just don't have to tune into.
Yeah, it's definitely a form of radio, and that's even with the radio show I do. Like, is like it's a streaming radio show, so it's available on AM, but it's also like on a stream. It's kind of collaborative. It has other people's podcasts and all this stuff in it. Anyway, radio is cool. Radio also, I've worked in radio. I mean, I'm all my life. I'm only 22, I've been in radio. But I've been in radio since the beginning of college. That's the only of all the things I've tried to do, like even before writing, like radio is the one thing I've been doing forever. Not forever, 5 years. And
radio is just like when you get to college and you haven't made any friends yet, and you're like, they'll be cool.
Yeah, and it is cool. And like, I don't know, I've worked with people in radio that are older than me, like mentors and stuff, and they've been like, when I was working in radio in the 80s and the 90s, people were like, oh, radio's on the way out. It's on the way out. Well,
and then I think it's back.
Well, yeah, but it's 2018, and like, it's not on the way out. Like, radio is so important to communities. Like, whether it's top 40, I mean, yeah, but like, to me, radio kind of brings together this like community feel, and like, I don't know, radio stations are really important, because even, especially now, maybe in an attempt to stay relevant, but however, especially in Nashville, I feel like you have all these events happening that are, sponsored by radio stations, and they're bringing live music in and teaching people about music, and there's a lot of music literacy and education going on through radio stations. And then you have like NPR, and now with podcasts, radio is kind of back in the political canon too. Yeah, and it is cool. I think radio is super cool. Like, doing college radio, I would just pull records off the shelf, like old ones, and like throw them on my show, and like that's how I discovered so much music. I got into the Smiths and all these bands through that. That, I guess we've kind of covered most everything. I feel like...
Do you have any specific memories with Animal Collective you want to share?
Wow. I feel like a weird one is last summer. I was in like a very transitional phase, and I revisited just the song My Girls over and over and over again. And I had a playlist. It was during the eclipse last year, and Nashville was one of the best places to see it. And I remember making a playlist that was like Eclipse, and it was just like that song and like maybe two others.
For 6 hours.
And and I just listened to that, and it was kind of a metaphor, kind of like the eclipse happening and where I was in life, and that song was like a constant right then for me. And I think that's my favorite Animal Collective memory, is listening to that in a time where like that's a song I could just process over and over, and it was really simple for me. But also I think like I wrote down like a list of songs that I thought were like my favorite, and Newtown Burnout has always been like a really fun one for me, and I feel like I've had some good like memories with friends, like listening to Newtown Burnout, like dancing around a living room at who knows what time, and and then also I think it's worth mentioning the song Floridada, because everyone has such strong opinions on that song.
And then better be that it's a fucking bop, because guess what,
Bop. And also this song is funny because there's like, it's like, I guess a Reddit subreddit, like r/Florida Man or something. Anyway, So A.V. Tara was like listening or reading all these Florida man stories, like Florida man murders wife, Florida man like kills alligator, like crazy shit that Florida man stuff does. And so they wrote this song to make fun of people in Florida. But once again, because it's Animal Collective, it's so subliminal, like people didn't get it. And but I remember I worked at like the school newspaper when that song came out, and I remember like my editors like fighting, like someone really loved the song and someone hated it, and everyone would just like keep playing it, and everyone was just, I don't know, it was like a big like contingent of like, did this song suck or was it a banger?
It came out like right when I was like going on a trip to Florida, and the girl I was with, we did not have similar music tastes, like, but like kind of like she was fine with it, but like La Bouche was her favorite band, and like that's it. And like I played Floridada on repeat for at least like 6 of the 8 hours like on the trip. She liked it by the end, but
and I think just, like, Animal Collective is a band where I can like do that, where like I can listen to a song over and over again, and there's so many layers of sound. You hear a different song every time. Yeah, and it's cool. I feel like there's side projects you should get into on your own. For me, Panda Bear is just my favorite. Panda Bear has played Pitchfork, and I don't know, Animal Collective.
Honestly, that says me and some girlfriends were talking about this a couple weeks ago. We were doing a whole discussion about like Grateful Dead, and we were talking about like different side projects like stemming from there, and then like comparing and contrasting them with
and that's another thing, like
projects.
Everyone in Grateful Dead has their own albums, and also Velvet Underground, you have Lou Reed's solo stuff and John Cale's solo stuff, and they're all so polar opposite. Geologist stuff sounds nothing like Panda Bear, and like, but they also help each other on their albums, like, and years down the road, I hope they're still doing that. I hope it's kind of like a Lou Reed, John Cale Songs for Drella thing comes out, but the Animal Collective version. Because they are best friends, and they're, you know, they rep the East Coast so hard, and they help each other, and, you know,
they are loyal.
Also, I think it's like a Rick Rubin quote, like the synergy of a band is way more important than the talent. And
you know what I would love to know? What are their signs?
Oh, wow.
Like,
I would think, to know their birth charts.
AV Tara would be a Leo. I would think Panda Bear is probably a Pisces.
Panda Bear has to be a water sign.
Yeah.
I literally need you to Google that.
I'll Google it.
What is his sign? Because, wow, yeah. What is Panda Bear's zodiac sign? I think this is important. The other day I was looking up Jack White's astrology sign, figured out he's a Cancer. Everything made sense.
Oh my gosh, you guys, we can have the birth chart. I have the birth chart of Panda Bear right here. Boom.
Crazy.
Bang.
What is his birthday?
His birthday is, let me pull the full natal chart. Oh my gosh. Bitch is a Gemini.
Oh.
His Venus is in Leo, so he gets down.
Oh my god. I think there's no way to fully explain Animal Collective because, you know, part of art is the interpretation, and for you, some random album may resonate with you more than any of the ones we talked about. And I think you should give Animal Collective a chance.
I also think you should get a time machine, go back to high school, get into them in high school, because that's when you're supposed to.
That's the best way.
That's the best time to be
It's a lot like Grateful Dead. you gotta really get into them in high school.
You gotta get in early, then you're stuck.
Yeah, I know I'm trapped in this, but thankfully they're unproblematic. I'm like
I just remember
every other favorite band I've ever had.
I remember one time, like, one of my best friends growing up, I have everything to thank for, like, half the music I still love. I just remember, like, being at her lake house and sitting on the dock and listening to, like, Purple Bottle. Like, that's one that we, like, repeated a lot.
I think freshman year of college, like, especially going to an art school, like a music business school.
Yeah.
That's where I, like, all the music I listened to then made the basis for what I like now in Animal Collective, like, especially Strawberry Jam.
Strawberry Jam, baby!
It was really big for me, and now it, like, makes sense that I like, all the stuff I like now.
Anco Forever.
Yeah, and I think also when I was talking about how Can was an influence to them, I was into Animal Collective before I was into Can, and I think one of my other favorite bands, like Brian Jonestown Massacre, which I did a podcast on, those two combined, when I heard Can, when I heard Ige Bamyasi, I was like, oh shit, like I get Animal Collective even more now, and back and forth. It all feeds into each other. Anyway, listen to Can, listen to Animal Collective. That's what I'm here to tell you. Okay, anyway, so I'd like to thank Patty for being on the podcast today. And you guys can find more information about the podcast on my website.
Like and subscribe.
Click like and subscribe, please, on YouTube. No. And if you have questions, email me. Don't email me anything mean, please.
Email me. Please send me an email.
If you have
I love emailing.
Email Patty. But we hope that you will give Animal Collective a chance and that you may think of them different now. Thank you guys so much, and this has been another episode of Bandsplainer.